I've had a few people ask me about how I've taken my lectures and seminars online. In 7 key points, I'll tell you about the equipment, the software and the techniques I've used to record lectures and stream live seminars. I'll be talking about laptops, green screens, lights, sounds, teleprompter and cameras, and just a little on how I set them up for both recording and live broadcast. So let's get started. My name is Ivan Whitfield and I'm a lecturer and programme leader in higher education in the UK. As my colleagues and I adapt to blended delivery of our programmes, I've realised that there isn't much of a step between basic screencasting and active engaging solutions to visualise our content. If this is what you're looking to achieve, then there's a few things you need to know if you want to avoid some of the basic problems you're likely to encounter, especially if you want to start using green screen. So number 1 is the laptop. I was using a 2013 MacBook Pro which had a dual-core processor and 8GB of RAM. It pretty much did everything I needed to do and it was absolutely fine, and we were sitting here in 2020 and there was not a problem with it apart from when I asked it to try and do some green screen. Now, I've used a few different types of software. I've used Zoom, I've used Microsoft Teams, and I've used some front-end software called Ecamm Live, which is Mac only, but there are other streaming software such as OBS and Streamlab OBS. There's quite a few out there which you can get, and some are free. The 2015 MacBook was probably 2012 technology and really struggled. If I asked it to do green screen backgrounds, it would just pick out the colour of a polo shirt and it would put the background onto the shirt itself. You can see on the overlay. This was easily solved by moving up to what I've got now is a 6-core processor, 2019 MacBook Pro, but quad-core processor, as far as I'm aware, is absolutely fine. The PC equivalent, again, absolutely fine. There's one piece of software that I mentioned called Ecamm. I'll talk about that in a second. I'll demonstrate it for you. That works only on Mac, but like I said, there's loads of streaming software out there if you want to take a camera feed straight in. So that leads me to the camera itself. So I use a Canon DSLR mirrorless M50. It's relatively affordable for DSLR cameras. You can pick it up with a kit lens for around about £550–600. I managed to find it online a little bit cheaper than that, and I was slightly worried at first, but it's fine. It arrived really quickly, and I'll put a link below to the supplier I got it from. The Canon lenses, the Canon camera, and I'm sure that same goes for Sony and Panasonic. The quality and the image that you get from it is definitely a step up. I also use a Vitate 960A webcam and it's great. It works just fine. And in fact, I can show you a little bit of a comparison. If I just take off my overlays for a second and bring in my second camera, you'll see that, it's comparable. I've got a different background on there. If I just try and choose the same background to the classroom, there we go. You can see that there is quite a difference. If I just zoom in a little bit and try and move myself to same size, yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty comparable. The shirt, the picture, the images, it's all a bit brighter. It's all a little bit, maybe you might say, overexposed. You can do some things within software to compensate with that. But, as a cheap £70 webcam, it's fantastic. And it's great for either a second view, or I use it within my seminars to do a close-up. I'm an anatomy and sort of sports therapy lecturer. I do lots of close-up stuff with anatomical models, and I can get the camera right in close and demonstrate little small movements of the spine, of the ankle. I can get into all of that pretty well with the webcam. That would be a lot easier. Well, it is a lot easier with the webcam than it is with the DSLR, which is on the main tripod. It's been a bit heavier. Just take that out and go back to my main shot there. So the camera itself, because I'm using Ecamm, will go straight in through a USB, and I can use a thing called virtual cam, and that virtual cam also feeds into Microsoft Teams and it feeds into Zoom, no problem at all. So any of the collaborative classroom stuff is quite easy to set up. And using the Ecamm software, I can flip between cameras and different views and demonstrate different things. I can have a document cam, I can have a second view webcam, I can have a main camera. So it works out pretty well. The only drawback, I would say, the DSLR really is cost. It's an initial investment of quite a few £100s, and it may be that if you don't have some software that allows you to do virtual cam, you'll also need something called a cam link, which is a card which converts the HDMI into a signal that your USB port, your computer, your laptop will understand. Like I say, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm not an expert in AV. These are problems that I've overcome on my journey. So the next thing I want to talk about is lights. The one thing I've learned so far is that you always need more light. I've been very fortunate to have people who can give me a little bit of information on this, and I picked up a lot of stuff from YouTube. I'm operating here with two main LED lights, which are Neewer 600s. I'll put a picture up and I'll put a link below. They are fairly bright. They're about 6 feet away from me, and I'm using a histogram on the Canon camera to sort of try and make sure that my exposure is okay. You can get away with, if you're doing really close-up work or using a webcam, you can get some fairly small lights. A Neewer 176 LED light is pretty good. It's very bright, it's very small. You can put it on very flimsy stands and it'll support itself really well. The green screen needs a whole different setup, and one thing I've really got to grips with now, and it took me a long time, is lighting the green screen. Green screen lighting has to be consistent and it has to be even. If you don't do that, you get a lot of artifacts appearing on the background. I use two Neewer wand lights, which are quite tall, 60 LEDs in each one, and I've got a light above it and I've got a small light below it as well. And these allow even lighting of the green screen. It's quite a difficult thing to get right, and I found that using an app which shows me where the hotspots are makes life a lot easier and saves me a lot of time. The next point I want to talk about is sound. Now, everything I've read and everything I've seen on YouTube, and then all the guidance I got when I was trying to put all this together, sound is probably the most important aspect of the presentation. People will forgive you a little bit of loss of video, but they'll switch off pretty quickly if the sound is not up to scratch. I've got a number of different sound options, including a Rode Video NTG, which is a shotgun microphone. I've got a condenser microphone which is sitting just above me, and I also use a lav mic, which is actually a Rode Wireless Go lav mic, which allows me in the seminar situation to move around the room, keep the camera maybe at the front of the clinic room, and I can move around and I don't lose the audio. The further you get away from any of the condenser mics or the shotgun mics, the more background noise you're going to pick up, and obviously the quieter your voice is going to get. The shotgun mics are very directional, and the condenser mic will pick up a little bit more of the surrounding noise. The lav mic is pretty good, it's very useful, and you lose a little bit of crispness, I think is probably the way I describe it. I'm sure there's a proper term for it. But it's great for, like I say, it's great for moving around. I put the audio from my mics into an audio interface, which is an Audient ID4. This was about £99. It's something I actually already had because I do a little bit of music for fun, as a hobby, and I was able to redeploy that as a pretty useful piece of kit. I put the microphone straight into an audio interface. That may not be absolutely necessary if you're using a USB mic that can go straight into your laptop. If you're using a DSLR camera, you can plug it straight into your camera and take the audio from there. Sometimes the preamps on the cameras are a little bit sketchy, so if you do have an audio interface, you'll probably get slightly better quality. The audio interface allows me to blend two mics if I want to, or have two audio sources. So if I was presenting with another lecturer or doing an interview, I could quite easily use a different channel for each microphone. So the next item on the list is the green screen itself. If I just turn this off, what you can see behind me is a fairly evenly lit green screen. You can see a few little creases and folds, and I've got it onto a frame, and I've got some cloth pegs which are trying to pull it tight. If you had a more permanent setup, you could literally attach it to a wall. There's lots and lots of green screen options out there, from pop-up screens to screens which sort of fold up a little bit like a collapsible tent. They just pop into shape. What I find with the frame is that it's semi-permanent. I can put it behind me if I want to stand up, it's tall enough. If I need to demonstrate some activities, maybe some exercises, some rehab exercises, then I can stand up and demonstrate them quite easily. I can also move clinic kit in like a treatment plinth and demonstrate any techniques that I need to. The green screen itself is a fairly versatile piece of kit. It's pretty inexpensive. You can pick up this green screen for £60–70 on Amazon, and easy to drop backgrounds in, different backgrounds. You've seen some different backgrounds. This is a standard one from the Ecamm software, but I've used quite a few different things. I can go to my anatomy lab. I can go to a classroom view, which you've already seen. I could drop the LED lights behind me if I wanted to. There's so easy just to chop and change and set the scene the way you want to set it. Like I say, the caveat is make sure it's lit properly. Light your subject and light the background as two separate things. Don't try and do two things at once. You will get problems. And if I could just demonstrate what might happen is if I was to try and bleach out, you get issues like this happening. You start disappearing, or the background starts disappearing, which is more common if you're not lighting properly. And if I can get it back to where it was, you get a nice blend. And for me, that looks as professional as I'm ever going to get it in the situation and the setup that I've got. The next point is the teleprompter. Not completely convinced by this. I've struggled a little bit with the sort of trying to get the speed right. You can spend a lot of money on a teleprompter. I haven't. I waited for one from China. It was a best view teleprompter. It sits on the front of the lens of the DSLR, and it has like a reflective screen at 45 degrees. You lose probably about half a stop of light when you are trying to sort of expose your picture, so you have to be aware of that. It seems useful. It's been quite a revelation. I've realised how much rubbish I put into my lectures, so it's helped me to cut it right down to the basics and save a little bit of time, which I think is quite important when doing online lecturing. I think it's very important to get to the point relatively quickly with these lectures and try and keep them to between 12 and 15 minutes, absolute maximum. If you can get a lecture into 10 minutes, that's a lot easier for front-end loading. It's easy to do maybe more of 10-minute lectures than it is to do one 20–30-minute lecture and lose the engagement of your audience. And my final point is the software I'm using to record this right now. I'm using a program called Ecamm Live. If I go into live demo mode, you can see, you pretty much track what I'm doing, and you can see what's going on the screen. You can see, hopefully I think you can see my whole screen now. Now, I think that for me this has been a revelation. I'm not an AV expert. I'm definitely not an expert in lighting and camera techniques. So this has been really good. So what this has allowed me to do is put things like my logo at the top, do a little bit of branding. It's allowed me to get some basics. If I want, you can see the little icons down here. These are different scenes that I've set up. So if I wanted to jump straight to a screen, then there you go. I bounce back out of that straight away. If I want to go to something like that, I can run it quite quickly on the fly. There's a nice little piece of software called Stream Deck, and you can set up buttons you can press, and you can seamlessly shift around. So if you're well practiced and well polished, you can make a very professional job at it. You can easily put in different scenes, and so if I can drop this in, for example, this is the Ecamm Live logo. It's very easy for me just to chop, change, and before I was changing the backgrounds, I can easily jump into something which is pretty standard in the background. There we go, sitting at home with a colourful shelf behind me. It's a fairly popular background to choose, and my natural stomping ground, which is the anatomy lab, which is where I do most of my lectures. The Ecamm software itself is a paid-for piece of software, and the difference between the standard and the pro version is about £40. Well worth getting the pro version because you get the virtual cam that I was talking about, which means I can take anything I'm doing here and put it straight into Zoom or put it straight into Microsoft Teams, and that makes a big difference to the presentation quality for the students. There are some free alternatives, and there's plenty of PC alternatives out there. Like I said before, Ecamm Live is Mac only, but there are products like EBS, which is free, open source, and allows you to do a similar sort of thing. If you go searching for the streaming YouTube videos for gamers, there's loads and loads out there to help and guide you. So there's my 7 key points to help you get started in taking your content online. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you found it useful, please give it a like and maybe even subscribe. And my next video, I'll be going through how I set up seminars, which are a little bit more complicated, but once you've got them set up, you can do very interactive and quite engaging sessions. Thanks for listening.